Sunil, do you want me to wait a few minutes here?
I think we should be fine. We can start now. If like someone still will join, then they will join, but
Okay,
like
no
we can
problem.
start.
Okay. So today we'll be discussing how to navigate through power of sale, foreclosure, and discussing short sales transactions, presented by Sumeet and Pavi from Legal Lab. Of course, we always have to have a disclaimer. This disclaimer is just the information in this presentation is provided as a practical tool and helpful guidance for realtors in Ontario. It's not legal advice, and it shouldn't be relied as legal advice. The key features today that we will be discussing is short sale transactions, power of sale transactions, and foreclosures. A short sale is when a seller is forced to sell their home and it's at a loss. So there's the first charge may be more than the sale price. And of course, down below, we will discuss further, but that's something to watch out for, because if the seller cannot come up with a shortfall, then that deal probably won't close.
Yes.
Power of sale, the seller becomes the lender. This is a clause within the mortgage commitment where a lender can enforce when the mortgagor does not pay, so the borrower does not pay on time and is a default of the mortgage. And foreclosure is slightly different than a power of sale. This is when the lender has taken over the property in certain circumstances where there's no value, the value isn't there for the property, and it's best that the lender maybe holds onto the property for future markets. They will have to go through legal proceedings and take ownership of the property rather than selling the property. First, we'll discuss power of sale and steps in the process of the power of sale. Mortgage default. So the very first step to a power of sale is when the borrower defaults on their mortgage. Borrower breaches terms or terms of the mortgage. Well, after 15 days, they will receive a notice of sale that's issued by the lender. And the lender will provide a redemption period. After about 35 days, and if it's a matrimonial home, after 45 days, so you could say about after 5 to 6 weeks, if the borrower has not redeemed the mortgage and brought his mortgage back to good standing, the lender takes over and lists the property. Items to watch out for in a power of sale. As a realtor, you want to make sure if either you're your client's buying a power of sale or you're selling a power of sale, the APS itself has to have the lender's name, and it must state that it's under power of sale. And this needs to continue even with the signatory line. And you should always, what we always see is that realtors miss writing under power of sale, and that's very, very important. The property, of course, will be sold as is and where is. So the seller or the lender is making no representation or warranties, no obligations to make any repairs or disclosures to the buyer, and knowledge of the seller is very, very limited, since typically it is the lender that has taken over the property. Other items to watch out for is the property vacant? Is it tenanted? If it's tenanted, you may not be able to view the property, and in certain circumstances, it may not be legally tenanted. Sometimes when a basement is tenanted, as a purchaser, your purchaser thinks that they're going to get a mortgage with showing rental income, but if the mortgage the new lender wants to see permits of the basement that's allowed to be legally rented, that's something that you have to do from the beginning. And if it's firmed and the deal is firm and the lender requires this before closing, there's no way you'll be able to get that information and possibly not be able to get a mortgage on the property. This is a very important one, possible risk of redemption. The owner, no matter how long it takes to close the property, even on the day of closing, the original owner can come back and redeem the mortgage. So at any time, the original owner can pay off the mortgage and take the property back, but not after your purchaser has closed and took over the property. Power of sale proceedings. There's two mechanisms available to the defaulting property owner. There's the right of redemption or a forbearance agreement. If you have a client that's going through this default and a power of sale proceeding, you can always advise them to have their lawyer negotiate a forbearance agreement, which allows them more time to come up with the funds, possibly refinance the property or negotiate a new structure where they're able to continue the mortgage. Rights of redemption. Now, this is provided by Section 22 of the Mortgage Act. A defaulting owner has the right to redeem the mortgage by carrying the default to bring the mortgage back into good standing. And of course, again, this creates a risk for your buyer client where the deal could possibly be canceled at any time. And it's important to flag this. I've put notes at the bottom, which are important notes. So you want to be able to flag this if your buyer, and nowadays you're seeing a lot of power of sales, and you may have a client that wants to purchase a power of sale. You want to make sure you flag this to the buyer client, because a lot of our clients, they don't know about redemption, and sometimes it's a shock when the mortgage has been redeemed and their offer gets canceled. So you want to flag that to your client at an early stage. Forbearance agreement, again, this is for any of your clients that are going through a power of sale. The best thing to do here is to have them contact their lawyer so the lawyer can negotiate a forbearance agreement. This allows for, again, more time before it goes to the market as a power of sale. And there could be other ways to protect that property where you can get a private lender or a different lender to take over the mortgage. Property sold as is, where is. Now, this is very important. Now, a lot of the times when you do purchase a power of sale property, they may only let you come view the property once. If you know it's a power of sale property, it's always important to maybe take an inspector with you on that day before you put the offer in. Try to inspect everything that you can inspect, because at the end of the day, the property, when it's closed, if there's issues after the fact, there's nothing that your lawyer or you can do for your client. The client is purchasing it and as an as-is property. And similar to the example that I gave earlier about the basement apartment, we see this a lot where basements are rented and they're not able to view the basement. So you don't know the condition of the basement. You don't know if there's the correct permits are in place. And a lot of investors try to use that basement rental income to get their mortgage approval. But a lot of the times, if there's no permit and it's not a legal basement to be rented, they could face issues in the future with their lender. A sample APS clause. For that purpose, to cover you, you could add this into your APS. So the buyer acknowledges and agrees that the property is being sold on an as is, where is basis without representation or warranties by the seller or its agents as to fitness for purpose, condition, zoning, or legality of use. This is a very important clause for any of your clients that are purchasing a power of sale. And this will protect you in the long run if something comes up at closing or after closing.
I think Anu has some question.
Oh, sorry, I can't see the questions. I have the full screen.
That's okay.
Anu, go ahead. You just kind of speak out when you do have a question, and we can answer that.
So, Sumeet, when you're on the slide right of redemption, could you please go back to that slide? It's 2 slides before. This
Right. Yeah.
this I don't understand when it says right is available to the property owner until the irrevocable sale of the property takes place, and any out-of-pocket cost paid by the buyer will be forfeited. As a realtor,
So
ensure
what
that
ends up, what happens with this is, you know, a lot of the times you may pay for inspections, you may pay your lenders a lender fee in advance, you may pay your brokers a broker fee. Anything that you pay, there's no damages. So all that money is kind of out of pocket, because the borrower, the original borrower, if the original borrower comes in, they take their property back, then of course your client gets their deposit back, but any additional costs that were incurred, they won't be able to recoup that.
So the deposit that we put, like either herewith or on acceptance of the agreement and all that, so that deposit will come back, but anything that the buyer usually pays for inspections and everything else, like a lower
Exactly.
fee or anything, that will not return to the buyer.
That will not return to the buyer. I mean, lawyer fees, you know, if it's a retainer, if it's a known lawyer, I mean, we don't keep retainers like that unless we've incurred costs. For example, you know, your lawyer, you may ask your lawyer to pull title immediately, and it's important to do that, to pull title, to understand what kind of liens, what kind of mortgages are on the property in case of a shortfall.
Okay, makes sense. So like that means that you have to be very careful if you're buying a property that is power of sale, because the money that you pay as a deposit will still stay in the I think the
In the
real
brokers, yeah, in the
estate
vendor's broker's trust account, that
trust.
you will get. That's not a problem. But you know, there's been incidents where the borrower, because you have to remember, they can redeem the property at any time. So even a week before closing, when your client is ready to close, you've already paid your lender fee, you've already paid your lender's broker fee, you might have already paid for inspection fees and lawyer retainers, and all of that unfortunately does not come back.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for explaining that to me. Really appreciate
Yes,
it.
of course, of course. I think we were here. So representing a buyer during a power of sale. Insist the buyer performs a home inspection. It's very important, unless you have a buyer that knows that, you know, he has to go in and renovate everything anyways. But if you have a buyer client that's looking to purchase the property to live, and you know, and the property is in somewhat good condition, and they don't have plans to renovate or clean up, then it's important to have them spend that money on the showing day and just get an inspection done immediately. If buyer declines the home inspection condition, and there will be buyers that say, you know what, it's okay, we don't want to pay that, we're fine, we'll take it as is. You want to ensure they sign the ORIA form 127 to confirm their understanding of the risk of not including and or waiving this condition. Explain to the buyer in writing that the risks associated with the as is, where is clause to ensure they understand the risks. So always inform your client that they're aware of what as is, where is means. Because again, there has been a lot of incidents where clients, English is a second language, and they had absolutely zero idea what as is, where is meant. Owner's right of a redemption, as discussed above, we'll just kind of give you an example of an issue. A buyer purchases a home under a power of sale, but the deal falls through 2 days before closing because the owner paid off the mortgage and reclaimed the property. The buyer has already sold their current home, which could be a problem, arranged movers, and incurred moving costs. They have also incurred costs relating to financing their purchase, including the payment of the mortgage broker's fee. So Anu, this is what we were discussing up above. So you want to make sure that they're aware that, maybe limit the amount of money you're spending, or they have to be okay with the fact that the funds spent, even till the day of closing, could be gone if the deal gets canceled.
Okay, makes sense. Is there any way you can protect the buyer against this, or like this is what it is? There is no clause, nothing to save the buyer in this regard.
The thing is, so it's a statutory right for the borrowers. At this point, it's the lender that's doing the deal. So there's no way to take out the borrowers. Like you can't ask the lender to have the borrowers waive, because the borrower in most cases will never waive this. It's a right by the Mortgage Act.
Okay, so that's the right that cannot be waived by any of the clauses that we can add to the APS.
No,
Okay, perfect.
that's just the risk of purchasing a power of sale. Owner's right of redemption. Again, this is a clause that you would want to add in your APS if you have a buyer client. The buyer acknowledges that this transaction is subject to the mortgager's right of redemption, and that the seller may cancel this agreement of purchase and sale without penalty or liability in the event the mortgage is redeemed prior to the completion date. So you want to make sure that this clause is in fact added in your agreement of purchase and sale. And it could be a lot to kind of understand this, but I always tell all the agents, and including Sunil and Sunil's team, just before you even sign the agreement, just send it to us for a quick review, and we can always help with these clauses. Realtor tips. Representing lender, this is for representing a lender client. If you're representing the lender, the APS must contain the redemption out clause. And that's the clause that protects the similar clause that we discussed up above. And representing a buyer client, always flag this clause to the client up front, as mentioned up above.
Awesome.
Pavi, you want to take this?
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you, Sumeet, for going in detail with power of sale. So now we'll discuss a little bit in depth about foreclosure. Foreclosure, essentially, it's a court supervised legal process. It's commenced by the lender when the owner defaults on the mortgage or the payment. And what happens is it involves the lender taking ownership of the property so that they can recover the outstanding debt. So there's a few different pieces that happen, and on the slide that you can see here, these are the steps that are involved. So what happens is the mortgage default occurs. What happens then is there's a notice of default that's sent. There's a redemption period, as Sumeet discussed previously, that there's a time where you can remedy that. If that's not remedied, so what happens essentially is when the mortgage default occurs, the lender sends a notice. That usually comes by way of a demand letter. When the demand letter is sent, there's a statutory period that you legally have where the lender waits for you to redeem that. That's that redemption period, right? If it's not redeemed, if it's not taken care of, that's when the lender can file the statement of claim. So as you can see there, it says statement of claim filed, and then underneath that says the defense is filed, right? Usually what happens is a lot of people, when defaults happen, the paperwork by lenders, they're pretty airtight. So usually there's not much of a defense to be filed. Again, when going through this process, it's essential to go straight and talk to the lawyer, tell the clients to talk to the lawyer because every day counts, right? Sometimes we can negotiate on the client's behalf to do like a forbearance agreement or do something in order to give more time to maybe refinance and be able to take on that mortgage because nobody wants, let's say you spent years accumulating equity on the property and now you've defaulted 1, 2 months and all those years of hard work building the equity, the lender's just going to take it and going to run with it, right? So that's the worst case scenario. So it's always important that anything that happens when it involves the court, especially, there's a lot of statutory time limits that happen. So make sure you review this with the lawyer, whether it's the realtor advising the buyer client or whether it's the person that actually defaulted, right? So after the statement of claim is filed, if there's a defense filed or not, there's a court decision. If the lender wins, there's a foreclosure order where a court grants owner a period to catch up on payments. That's the redemption order, right? After the court decision, there's an eviction and sale of property, and that's if the owner cannot rectify the default. The lender can then proceed with eviction and sell the property to recover the outstanding debt. So just to recap the steps, first, the mortgage default occurs. That's when the owner misses multiple mortgage payments. They get a notice of default. That's usually after 2, 3 months, the lender issues notice of default, and that informs the owner that, hey, you guys missed the payments. As per this agreement, that constitutes a default, and now we're going to take legal action. Just a tip for you guys right now, with the current economic state that we're in, banks are hyper aggressive to push for these. They're not going to wait 2, 3 months usually. It depends on what's going on, but if they get an opportunity, they're ready to throw that letter at you. And then the redemption period starts. So the owner has a set period to cure the default and pay off the overdue amount to bring the mortgage back into good standing, right? If it's not resolved, the lender then files a statement of claim with the court and it formally begins the foreclosure process. The court has a decision. If the lender wins, there's a foreclosure order. Where the court grants owner a period of time to catch up on payments, that's a redemption order. So that's a very important part as well for getting legal representation for the client at this portion because the lawyer can sometimes negotiate a way to get a redemption order to allow more time for the client to get back in good standing. After the court decision, if it's not successful, the eviction and sale of property process occurs. And so that essentially means that if the owner cannot rectify the default, the lender can then proceed with the eviction and sell property to recover the outstanding debt. I'll give you guys a quick example, okay? What happens these days is that when the bank goes after a potential client for the outstanding default, it's very hard to defend that, right? And as the economic market is becoming more uncertain, the banks are becoming more and more hyper aggressive to do these things. So as soon as a demand or anything formal hits, make sure you talk to a lawyer immediately because every day counts. And there's a few strategies that you can do if the default cannot be remedied. So I just wanted to give that out there. The current climate, banks are hyper aggressive. Make sure you get legal representation or you have millions of dollars at stake, right? It's always good to have someone that's looking at this paperwork every day, day in, day out. There's a lot of different strategies that you may not know exist, right? So that's kind of the steps of how the foreclosures go. If we can go to the next slide, please.
Thank you.
So there's a few key differences in foreclosures versus power of sales. Number one, the difference that there's lender control, there's court involvement, and there's liability for shortfall. In lender control, in the foreclosure department, the lender takes legal ownership of the property and they can decide on how to deal with it. For example, let's say the lender is owed $1.5 million dollars and the property is valued at, let's say, $2.5 million. The lender just wants to get their money back. And if you take them to court, let's say they sold the property and it got sold for 1.2 million, 1.3 million dollars, but it was appraised at a much higher value, right? It's very difficult to sue them after saying that, hey, our property was worth this much, we built years of equity in the home or in the property, and it got sold at such a big discount. So when the court process is involved, it's very difficult to say, hey, it was an unfair process, right? So first of all, it's always a good idea to discuss with clients, before they're purchasing, or if power of sales are happening, foreclosures are happening, you want to let them know a little bit of an understanding of what's going on in the climate, how it works. Because when you explain to the client kind of the processes, what's going on, they understand and they're on the same page. As a realtor, as a lawyer, even for us, we have a duty to explain everything to the client and help them be on the same page. Not only do they feel more comfortable, but they also feel more safe and protected because you've outlined everything for them, right? So let's get back here. So one of the differences in lender control in foreclosures, the lender takes the legal ownership of the property and they can decide how they deal with it. In power of sale, the lender sells the property on behalf of the borrower under power of sale. Okay? Number two, court involvement. In foreclosure, it's a court supervised process, whereas in the power of sale, that's an out of court process and it's usually faster. Lastly, liability for shortfall. In foreclosures, the lender cannot pursue the borrower for any shortfall if the sale price doesn't cover the debt. It's as is, where is in that process as well. Under power of sale, the lender can still pursue the borrower for any shortfall. So, foreclosure, just remember, it's more so court involvement. And as you know, when courts get involved, it's more supervised. And under power of sale, it's more so in a private manner, right? It's not as court supervised, and the lender at the end of the day can pursue the borrower if they sold a property and they're still owed a couple of 100,000. We can go to the next slide.
So Pavi, how can we protect ourselves? Because sometimes we meet the client, they want to sell the property, we like list the property, but we don't know if they have the equity in the house or like not. Sometimes in today's market, they might be on like negative side as well, and we don't know what's the situation between the bank and the client. Actually,
So
we had,
Sunil,
yeah.
the best thing for that is the only way to find out is to go call the lawyer, get the lawyer to pull title on that property. And when we pull title on the property, we can see exactly what loans are on the property, and we can pull the loan agreements to see if there's when it's up for maturity, or if there's any writs on the property. So your lawyer would be able to assist with that. And that's a good question, because that's something that we'll be discussing in the shortfall in the next slide. But that's something that you need to be aware of, and the agents need to be aware of, because what ends up happening is, if you take even a power of sale property, you list it, first the lender is taking all the money for themselves to pay out the first charge. The commission is the last item that gets paid. So before any of that, you would want to make sure that you know what the rock bottom number is before you accept an offer, so that your commissions aren't impacted.
Okay, sure. So basically, I think Ajay had a client. We listed the property, and then we found out that's undergoing the bank of sale, or then bank took over that property. Whereas he sold the property to client, the deal got firm, and then bank took over the property. So now the case is probably it will be going to the small claim court to get the like deposit back. But how would have we I mean, so do we have to take permission from the client to get the loan agreement or read thing from the
No,
client?
you don't have to take, if, especially if it's already happened, maybe you make it a standard practice to ask any of your clients if they're in good standing with their mortgage, right?
Okay.
And that they're not being the mortgage is not being enforced. And, the best question to ask and maybe even put it in writing is that you're in good standing with your mortgage and not in default of the mortgage if you suspect anything.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you,
And
Sumeet.
the best way to do that, Sunil, is because you don't want to offend any of your clients either. So the best way to do that is, give us a call. We'll pull the title. It only costs a couple of dollars to pull the title. Right away, I will be able to see how many mortgages are on title and what we're trying to sell the property for. If the margins are very tight, then we know that maybe we should ask the client if they've defaulted on the property. But yeah, nowadays it's a great question to ask. Before this past year, before 2024, I would say the average power of sale in all of Canada was about 300. That's it. Now we're already probably up to like 3,000, and it's climbing by the day.
Awesome. Thank you, Sumeet. Just to finish off the last slides for foreclosure, some important considerations you want to look at is number one, seek legal advice. If your client is facing foreclosure, it's crucial to have them seek legal advice from a lawyer specializing in real estate law as soon as possible. As you know, there's a redemption period, which is the next consideration. If the redemption order is granted, the homeowner has a limited time to catch up on payments and avoid the foreclosure, right? So the clock starts ticking as soon as a demand is sent out. Okay? Then what you'd want to do is just explore the options that you have. There may be options available to your client that can help avoid foreclosure, and that includes negotiating a payment plan with your lender or seeking assistance from credit counseling services, right? So sometimes what you want to do is if all else fails and you feel like you can refinance something or you feel like there's something that you can do a forbearance agreement. And all that is a negotiation saying, hey, look, we understand that we've defaulted on A, B, and C. However, we can make a payment plan based on your comfortability so that we can keep the property. So there's multiple different options. These alternatives, they can afford more time for you as their realtor to assist them with the sale of the property instead of just allowing the lender to take over.
We have a quick question on this one. So
Sure.
I came across a case, not from the seller side, but the buyer side. So one of our buyers, her property has been on sale for over like 8 months now. It's some realtors trying to sell it, and she has defaulted on her mortgage now, and she can't go ahead and do borrow any money from her house equity to like carry on with her mortgage. So
hmm
what do we do in that case?
So in that case, first of all, it's very important to get those documents sent over so we can review. It's hard to give you a full inclusive answer to that because there's a lot of caveats that happen. Let's say worst case scenario, there's no funding, there's nothing that can be done, there's a lot of debt owing. That's when you kind of look into, do you want to do a consumer proposal or do you want to do a bankruptcy, right? So that really depends. But if you're going to go worst case scenario, nothing can happen, then at the end of the day, the smart thing to do would be to give a notice of intention to defend. That allows the client to have a little bit more breathing room. It allows 10 more days to respond. And then what you do is there's a few people that me and Sumit know. They handle a lot of these types of cases. Worst comes to worst, push comes to shove. They can help you with the debt management. So that would go under debt management if all else fails.
So
And
if the
on that
property,
note, also forbearance at that stage, a forbearance agreement is probably the best thing to negotiate, especially if she just started defaulting and her property is already for sale. If her property is for sale for 8 months, she should advise the realtor to maybe reduce the purchase price. And start negotiating the forbearance agreement immediately. Even if, it's always best, and you can speak to your clients as well, it's always best to get the full picture. If they know that, we have this much savings and by the time December comes around, I'm not going to be able to afford the mortgage payments.
yeah.
Get on the phone or get, you can get them to call us and we can get on the phone with the lenders or the lenders' lawyers and start negotiating a plan and put in place a plan of action immediately, just to let them know and kind of try to say that this is all my client can afford, but the property is listed. So prior to you taking any action, can we reduce the payment and cover the rest of it on the sale? So there's always room to negotiate, but it becomes the window starts closing as soon as you start receiving notices from the lender for default.
Okay, and we can do that as her like representatives, because we are only her representative from the buyer end, not the seller end, right? But she has already have like a realtor that she's working with on the selling end. So would that be us stepping on someone else's shoes if we are doing that on like from her side as her like
Yeah, in that situation,
representative?
you only want to do it for your own client. If in your situation, if you're representing a buyer that wants to purchase the property, you really can't provide that advice.
Yeah.
But what I could tell you, what's going to happen with that is, if the realtor doesn't reduce the price
Yeah.
and if they can't sell the house and it goes into default, then the bank is going to take over and the bank is going to remove that realtor and put their own realtor on, because the bank is going to just look at the market analysis and price it at a rate where it would be able to sell.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. Thank you so much, Sumeet, for that. Really appreciate it.
Yes, of course. Bobby, can I switch the slide?
Yep. Thank you, guys.
So now we're going to discuss shortfalls. So shortfalls are short sales, in other words. Owner is the seller. So now this is, again, taking action before you even get that default notice. But, the seller may have to sell at a loss because they're financially distressed. Now, one thing that's important here is if the property sells for less than what the mortgages are on the property or any liens or any other orders on the property, then that property, unless the seller does not agree to cover that, or if we don't we negotiate with the lenders to come up with an agreement for that shortfall, then typically that property won't close, because on the day of closing, what happens is to transfer the deed, which is the ownership, to transfer the title, we would need to remove everything that is currently active on title. So us, if we're representing the buyers, if we're the buyer's lawyers, then we would send a requisition over to the vendor's lawyers saying, there's this many items. We will list all the mortgages, all the liens, and we would advise them to remove everything. But if they don't have enough funds to remove everything, then that sale on the day of closing could fall through, unless there's either a negotiated agreement or the buyer, or the seller somehow comes up with the shortfall. To identify a potential short sale transaction early on in the process, be on the lookout for the warning signs that may indicate the homeowner is in financial distress. Okay, Sunil, this goes back to what you were asking. So we want to make sure, again, you contact us, we'll make sure that there's no multiple mortgages registered on title to the property. there's no liens. As soon as we see a lien on the property, that's bad news. That means, there could be others that are affected, which are the mortgagees, the lenders, if they haven't paid a certain contractor, for example, or a different vendor, then chances are they're almost either in default or they're about to default on their mortgages. If there's writs registered against the registered owner, those could be private agreements, personal agreements where they haven't fulfill their commitment of any money that was owed on those contracts. So then, third-party companies register writs on the personal name. Of course, we can always find out if there's missed payments on the mortgage. And the biggest one also is property tax. Anybody since I've been practicing, what I see a lot is, they'll make their mortgage payment, but then their property taxes haven't been paid for a year. If that's the case, that's a huge red flag. And that will prompt us to contact the mortgage lenders and request all the information and to make sure that the mortgages are in good standing. And then, of course, market value of property is less than the balance owing for the mortgages. So, we calculate the liens and the mortgages. If there's not enough funds to even cover all the payments that are registered on the property, then chances are you won't get your commission either. So that's a major red flag there. Tips for the realtors, representing seller clients. Ensure that any APS that is presented includes a condition for the benefit of the seller for at least 5 to 7 days for lawyer review. Without confirmation that debt can be repaid, the seller is not in a position to complete the transaction. So again, if the debts can't be paid, that deal that you think will close, chances are it won't close on the closing day. Before taking on a listing, try to estimate the market value of all debts and commissions. In your case, commissions is the most important. That's what you're working for. So you want to make sure there's enough money to cover your commissions. Confirm whether there are any errors on the mortgage judgments as discussed up above. Assess whether the seller has access to additional funds to close in the event of a short sale. Again, that's when, you can speak to Pavi and myself or any lenders, any brokers that to help that seller client of yours to try to come up with that shortfall. Whether, I know a lot of people are getting creative with, if they have companies, they get business loans under the company to pay down these shortfalls for the short sale. Again, it's essential to contact a lawyer and to make sure that you're protected and your commissions are protected. Seller may need to inject funds. These are just items that we discussed up above, so I'll just leave these alone. And we've left examples. I don't want to kind of go through the examples. There's a lot of examples. I've put these examples for you to understand scenarios. And if you have any questions, for me or Bobby, you guys can always reach out to us at any time, and that will be pro bono consulting, so you don't have to worry about any legal fees or anything. In today's market, we're seeing a lot of deals that aren't closing, which could have closed if you protected it in the beginning. So when you do bump into a client, whether you're buying the place or you're selling the place, just give us a quick call, schedule a call, and we'll help guide you and make sure that you're protected in the agreement of purchase and sale. Or if it's not in the agreement of purchase and sale, we will protect you and your time and kind of advise whether this is a good listing to take, because you may or may not be wasting your time if commissions can't be paid. That's it for the presentation. Do we have any questions?
So in like one of the case, I just like a listing, he sold the listing, it became firm, and then after that, bank came and they took over the property. So though the deal was firm, but did not go through. And now in that case, can he claim the commission in the small claim court, or we cannot claim because we did our job, we like sold the property and it was firm, but the our client did not disclose the things to us properly.
Okay, so it comes back to how your APS was drafted, because what the client can say, what your client, previous client can say is that I was not told about redemption, right? Or I was not told that they are obviously going to have a defense. Now, the other issue is that client that you're trying to sue for the commissions, it's not the bank that's going to be paying the commissions. You have to personally sue the original, your original client. Now, does he have enough funds to even pay those commissions? Because you know, you don't want to go through legal fees and incur litigation costs and go to court and the individual has no assets. But you know that, Bubby, do you have any comments for that?
Yeah, usually what happens is when the bank takes over, usually in commercial items, there's a receiver that gets put in place. And essentially, that person is a trustee of the bank. The bank is the lender. And it's usually court appointed, right? So as soon as the court appoints that trustee is now responsible for the sales process, etc. And usually what happens is, let's say you have that buyer and they're serious about that and they were firm, what they can do is instead of just waiting around, you can see that, okay, there's a sales process happening for that property. You can submit your bid there. So if they're willing to purchase it before, I'm sure they'd be willing to purchase it again. All they'd have to do is submit that bid and just pay attention with that receiver. So what I would do in your position was I would send an email to that trustee saying that, hey, I have a potential buyer client. He's interested. And then just explain to him that this was the situation and just have a conversation with that. Usually people, you know, they're understanding and what they're looking out for is the best offer for the lender, which is probably the bank, right? So if you can get in your foot in there as soon as possible and let them know that you know you have somebody that's putting a serious bid in, you guys can have that conversation. So what usually happens, the receiver gets put in, there's a sales process, there's usually a data room, and they require you to sign an NDA. And once you sign the NDA, you have access to all the comps. You review the comps, and that's if you're comfortable, you want to purchase it, you put a bid in. It's a public process, anybody can put their bids in. So you know, may the best offer go through. But essentially, once the receiver is put in place, it's very difficult to like there was an instance that there was a realtor on file and he was on file for like 2, 3 years and he's been working on it. That property defaulted and the bank put a receiver in. And now that realtor he's very pissed off and he's like, I've been working so long on this. I need my commission. He's trying his hardest. He tried to sue the receiver. He tried to do A, B, C, and what ended up happening is you simply put in a good bid. The trustee will review it, and the best bid for the lender will get taken, right? So that's my, if I was in your shoes, I would just reach out to the trustee and try to see with them what they are thinking when they want to have the sales process and let them know to keep you posted. Let them know every step of the way we have somebody that's interested. That way, whether you get a commission or not, at least it builds your client relationship better that hey, look, Sunil and his team, they took really good care of me. This happened, but I was still able to become successful. At the end of the day, what do we work for, right? We work for developing a good relationship with people, right? So when we are informed about how the processes work, we're able to give a better strategy to the client, right? If there's any other questions down the line or client has any problems, feel free to give me or Sumeet a call. We're here for you guys.
Perfect. Thank you.
Now, Sunil, one question for you. That property that you're talking about, did it go into power of sale or what happened, or did it go into foreclosure?
So I think it went to the like power of sale, but then after that, she paid the money and whatnot, and now the like listing is with her. So that's how. She took it back from the bank. That's what she told me. But after that, now she wants to sell the property. She again talked to us that if we can still make the deal, but the other people, they have already bought a new house.
Okay.
Okay.
And the like prices have gone down to a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of an unfortunate situation because, what she's gonna say is, well, her defense is gonna be the Mortgage Act, saying that I could have redeemed this anytime. So,
Yes.
it would be a little bit of a waste of time and money trying to pursue this in court.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
And then so the deposit came to the brokerage. Now we have the deposit. She doesn't want to sign the document to release the deposit, and that is the like situation now.
That's one thing that you can, keep push for. You can say, we did our work and we're keeping the deposit. Because especially if it's in your trust account, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Yeah, so that you can, it's good that you have a deposit in place. But did you represent the seller or the buyer?
Seller.
Seller, and
Yes.
the deposit was coming from the buyer?
Yes, but actually we don't want to keep the deposit because I think like buyers were in a difficult situation too. We are telling our client to like let the deposit go and
No, she has to let it go because if they take her to court and she doesn't let that go, she's in trouble because she redeemed the property, right? So it won't be fair to them.
Yes.
And did it pass the closing completion date on the
Yes.
original PS? Yeah, okay. Okay. Well, if you have any other questions, you can just just shoot me an email, send me the APIs, I can review it for you. That's not a problem.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank
Okay.
you.
Do we have any other questions?
If you can put your contact or business card on slide, please.
What I can do is, Inder, Sunil, if you don't mind, give me the list of all the agents, and I'll personally reach out to them, and I'll give you a copy of the PDF, and you'll have all our contact information as well.
Sure. No problem. Perfect. We'll do
That
that.
would be amazing. Thank you, Sumeet.
Thank you. Yeah, so as Sunil's team, you guys can just kind of let Sunil know if you guys want to learn other maybe other areas or whatever it may be, or any issues that you may be having, and we can always do a presentation once a month, and we can come
I
up
think
with
this is a perfect time to learn about the legal matters about this because like so much is happening in the like market and it's kind of slowed down a bit. Like what do you say, everyone? Do you guys want to learn the legal aspect of the things too? And then we can have a like meeting like this once a month.
Yes, sure. That's a learning process is good.
Very good. And it's knowledge, this kind of knowledge you can provide to your clients. It goes a long way. They know what you're talking about, and sometimes it may stop them from going into default or other issues, and whatever the issues that are, we can always, you guys can always contact us, and if you want our advice or opinion, we can always provide that as well.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you,
Well,
guys.
thank you,
Thank
Sunil.
you.
Thank you for organizing and arranging this. And I guess we'll see you in the next month.
Okay. See you.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
guys. Thank
Thank
you.
Thank you so
Nice to meet
much.
everyone.
Have a good
Bye-bye.
day.
Cheers. Bye.